Okay, there is so much to cover, and I'm going to try to get through it relatively quick. This is kind of a roundabout reply to two different subjects, but I promise you, they do actually relate. So I just saw the most awesome video I have ever seen on pathological demand avoidance or persistent demand for autonomy, which, for the record, I love that second term. It's so good. A common neurodivergent trait, I have it in a certain degree. Nothing gets me access to my mental library quite like someone positing something that I know is wrong and I know I have references. I'm watching this fantastic video that's integrating the intellectual experience, the internal responses. I mean, the level of the granularity, the detail, and the thoroughness of self-reporting on display here is just jaw-dropping. I'm identifying with quite a lot of it, but I've got something picking at the back of my head the whole time, and then it dawns on me. Peter Thiel, the guy who's perpetually telling Vladimir Tepish to hold his beer. Fond of Rene Girard, who in turn is very fond of his own idea of mimetic violence and mimetic desire. That people don't know what they want, and they look to a collective to give them guidance on that. And in participation, internalization of that desire as if it was their own, everything I've said in the last couple of weeks about inclusion and exclusion is primary social drive. In the case of Girard, I think what we've got is a great case of someone who is doing a very, very fine job of describing a thing without correctly identifying the thing that they're describing. I can't entirely blame him for that. He didn't come up with the idea of Pax Humana. Whether we like it or not, the idea of a human nature, a single, unified human nature. Do you see where I'm going at? The idealized human, the normal human, the human from which all humans that are less human than that human are derivative, right? Yeah, we know where we're going here. Thing is, I'm not just talking about the individual. In this particular case, we're dealing with a model of the general that is so specific. I think it does a really, really good job of describing something very well. One particular neurotype. Girard calls mimetic violence and mimetic desire. I think I describe with a little more granularity the process of sociocultural normativity and the process of negotiating ins and outs. It's okay. I had the advantage of reading Foucault. Girard, at the time of writing, did not. I also imagine that Girard did not have the formative benefit of countless hours of Usenet debates on Xavier's philosophy versus Magneto's. Problem is, he's a contemporary of Nagel and about a century and a half past time of writing of Alexis de Tocqueville, so he had other ways of getting to that same destination. He just didn't get there. He's still operating from this modernist substrate, which, when you get right down to it, is Neoplatonism. We still have this problem of the map is not the territory, and cartography is an inherently artistic endeavor. Anything that isn't taking that head on, frankly, almost invariably rests on that same problematic foundation. The relationship between cognition, volition, initiation of desire, experience of desire, desire as an individual phenomenon, and desire as a social phenomenon, every position of this relationship to those concepts is totally irreconcilable with Girard's model, and sufficiently disruptive to it that the consensus building would not and could not functionally occur in any reliable way in which someone who is approaching initial volition and internal volition, like the inception of desire, from a persistent demand from autonomy standpoint, they would completely short-circuit the entire process. This cannot be a functioning expository model unless we pretend that the exceptions don't exist. Oops, we've been doing that. The entire discipline does that. Please, if someone has found a really, really good work of cultural epistemology that acknowledges neurophysiological differentiators in a stable and genetically transmissible way across generations long enough for there to be cultural footprints, let me know, because as far as I can tell, that book does not exist. Seems like a pretty big thing to overlook. I mean, my God, it's almost as if the concept of governance according to principles foundational to a human nature concept is the modern divine right. We rule by the grace of God's science, by whose steady and culturally unbiased hand, with absolutely no interest in securing grant funding whatsoever, universal truths are uncovered, not described, uncovered, not encountered, uncovered. Thank goodness the absolute and objective secrets of the universe are written in a human parsable language and in MLA format. We could try to get Girard off the hook via Alexis de Tocqueville, 18th century French political philosopher extremely concerned with the concept of governance through knowledge. In particular, his posit that governance of human beings by human beings is only ultimately possible through general ideas, a generalized sense of a population. Interestingly, he did posit a parallel of governance via specific ideas, but he attributed that to necessarily being divine. That the kingdom of heaven would involve an all-knowing being that knows everything about the particularities, the needs, the desires of everyone that is being ruled, and makes decisions that, via omnipotence, are able to attend to all of those equally. This incidentally being why the overwhelming majority of third-wave atheist arguments just drive me absolutely bonkers, because for crying out loud, the idea of a divine being that is capable of suspending paradox is not a new concept at all. But anyway, de Tocqueville doesn't entirely get us off the hook, because this isn't a problem of a particularity in the sense of a deviant factor within the. We have every reason to believe there have been neurodivergent populations for the entirety of recorded history. There's no contrary evidence, and for that matter, and this is the real rub, persistent demand for autonomy is entirely reconcilable with the preferred information state seeking of the people who experience it. The more you look at it, the more different aspects of neurodivergence fit together well enough that we really have to ask a very, very philosophically awkward question. One that frankly is not surprising at all to anyone who's already embraced the neurodiversity model. At what point are we no longer looking at a broken version of a thing and are instead looking at a whole version of a something else? And what if the evidentiary tipping point for that preceded recorded history?